Okay, I think we'll get started. So velkomin kæru gestir. Ánægjulegt að koma hér saman í dag til að heyra frá tveimur frábærum Fulbright fræðimönnum. Viðburðurinn fer fram á ensku og mun ég nú skipta yfir. Dear guests, I welcome you to this Fulbright forum where two of our fabulous Fulbright scholars will talk about their experiences in Iceland over the past months. Let me note that we are also live on Facebook and Zoom for those who can't be here in person. And let me also note that we are recording. We will be taking questions after the presentations. So if you're not here in person and you want to ask a question virtually, I would ask you to log on to our Zoom link as questions will be taken there. And for those who are here, there are refreshments, so please help yourselves. The commission is pleased to have these two scholars here. Both have been on Arctic grants. Not the most typical topics when we talk about the Arctic, but we like to have variety and look beyond the obvious when we choose our grantees. And these two women have not disappointed. They have been making valuable contributions with their research and teaching, building connections and engaging locally in a meaningful way. I, for one, am looking very much forward to hearing about their experiences here in Iceland, although I'm very sad that they're both leaving at the end of the semester. You know, we always have to roll with the punches. Our first speaker today, unfortunately, was diagnosed with COVID. Cayla, who has been here on a Fulbright Icelandic Ministry for Foreign Affairs Scholar Grant, Arctic Scholar Grant. She's hosted by the University of the Arts and is visiting from Edgewood College, where she's a lecturer in the music department. And you might wonder what this has to do with the Arctic. Well, just wait and hear all about it. I can say that it definitely came together for me when I heard Kayla sing in Icelandic at the end of October. But enough for me, let's hear from Kayla. And I think, is the share on already? Do we need to do anything? Yeah. So, go ahead, Kayla.
Okay, hi everyone. I think I'm sharing now. Is that true? I can't hear you.
Yes, yes, you're sharing.
Oh, good. Okay. Hi, Hannah. Good to see you.
Hi, you too.
I cannot hear Pieter, but I'm glad that you can hear me. Is it okay to keep going, Pieter?
I think so.
Just a moment. We're figuring out here. Okay, we see you now.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. I am Dr. Kayla Roche. And as Belinda said, I was here in Iceland with Listaháskóli, working on Icelandic lyric diction and repertoire. My Fulbright project was to teach English and Icelandic singing diction at Listaháskóli, and to refine my Icelandic singing diction handbook, which is the first of its kind, and I'll talk more about that in a minute, what that means. I also had a goal to learn some more Icelandic repertoire so that I could teach my students back in the States this wonderful repertoire and also write about it. And also catalog Icelandic repertoire by level of difficulty. The picture on the left is taken at the recital that Belinda mentioned. So I thought it might be important to start with what is phonetics. The picture on the right is some examples of what phonetics might look like. This was taken during the class that I taught at Listaháskóli. Phonetics is the study of and classification of speech sounds. And to do that, we represent speech sounds with the with IPA, the International Phonetic Alphabet. IPA are the symbols that you can see on the right, and it's a universal language that represents sounds. For example, a small letter I will sound like E, no matter which language I'm speaking in. At many schools for music in the States, we are required to take a series of diction courses in English, Italian, German, and in French. And some of the other Arctic languages have also been transcribed into phonetics. So Norwegian and Danish and Swedish and Finnish all have handbooks written about an IPA. And Icelandic is the only language that was missing from the Arctic. So that's how my project sort of ties in to the Arctic grant. Another language that's missing is Faroese, but that is similar to Icelandic and is a project that I'll hopefully cover in the next few years. Singers use IPA to sing with understandable diction in languages that maybe they don't even speak or aren't very familiar with. It allows us to get approximately 95% of the way there to the proper speech sounds. And then the goal is that then they go study with a coach, but they don't have to start from scratch with a coach. The rules here are slightly different though than in spoken Icelandic, for instance, or in any language. That's why this is important. And so that's what I developed there. The Icelandic language has been characterized using phonetics, but only the spoken language. So my resource helps singers, excuse me, with Icelandic singing diction. So I've developed things like this chart that you can see on your screen. I know it looks kind of daunting and I'm not going to explain it all, but I'll give you a breakdown that on the left side, these are letters in the Icelandic alphabet. And then under the IPA column, this is how we would transcribe those letters into phonetics. And then in the next column, those are the exceptions to the rules that are in the IPA column, because Icelandic can't be simple, and neither is any other language. But the fact that we can list the exceptions here is actually really beneficial to our singers. And then on the far right are Icelandic examples with the phonetics and then also with the English translation. And I've created charts like this for for all of the phonemes in Icelandic. And so I have a chart like this for diphthongs, which are two vowels back to back in a single syllable. And I've also developed this for the consonants. And of course, the consonants are much more complicated to describe. And I've actually had to be quite creative and make up phonetics for the Icelandic consonants. This chart was used to teach my students at Listaháskóli. And in my class, this was the first time that the phonetics was offered using IPA. So this class has been offered before, but the class was taught using Icelandic phonetics, which are wonderful, but are really difficult for people like me to understand because I don't have a background as much as native Icelanders do. So using the IPA helps bring Iceland to the same playing field as the other languages that singers are singing in competitions and in recitals across the world. So students used the charts that I made. In this class, we also used a book by Sherry Montgomery to learn English diction. And then students used those phonetics to transcribe songs that they would learn in the class and then perform at the end of the class for their final. And what students have told me since this class is that they've actually transferred this skill of using phonetics to the current opera that they're learning that's not in Icelandic and not in English. In fact, some of them have talked about using it in their French songs and in their Italian and their German as well. So I'm really happy to hear that the skill is transferred to other languages because we don't just sing in English and in Icelandic, obviously. This picture on the right was taken during Halloween. It was on Halloween Day. And so that's why we all look a little bit silly, but the class was a hoot. So I thought that was quite fitting for today's presentation. We had a lot of laughs and I think they learned a lot as well. So then the other part of my project was giving a recital, and all of these pictures are in preparation for the recital or at the recital. The reason I decided to give a recital was to learn more about Icelandic repertoire and work with the Icelandic coach Eva Thierry. She knows this repertoire and she was able to give me some background information that I otherwise wouldn't have working on this repertoire in the States with an American pianist. And she's pictured on in the top left photo. In preparation for the recital, what I learned is that there's not a lot of sets of pieces. Composers in other countries often create sets which are created using maybe the same poetry, the same poet, or a similar theme. But this isn't a very popular trend in Iceland. And so it sort of makes it difficult to create sets of pieces that fit together. So what I learned though is that Halldór Laxness wrote or is represented in the poetry for a lot of Icelandic songs. And I was really interested in his poetry. But what was really fascinating to me was that he's a novelist to me. That's how I know Halldór Laxness. And so I decided to build a set of songs using Halldór Laxness poetry. But in doing that, I discovered that many of these poems are in his novels. But in the repertoire, the composers don't necessarily tell you from which novel the poems are taken. So that's the work that I decided to do as part of cataloging the repertoire that I discussed in the first slide talking about my project. And so to do this, I have just finished a journal article that catalogs all of Halldór Laxness poetry and from which books they come from. And my hope is that in the future, I can also talk about what's happening in the stories that are surrounding this poetry to sort of give it more time and place for the singers. Even though the poetry does stand alone, I find that it's really helpful to put my mind in the mind of the poet, and in this case, also the novelist, when I'm creating my own storyline, when I'm performing this repertoire. And so I wrote about 3 songs specifically. I wrote about Glöggen by Jorn Viður, and Hér liggur í móðu, and also Dans. And I've also introduced the readers to composers who set these songs. When possible, I also explained what's happening in the story for these 3 poems, and also what's happening in Halldór's life. I also included information about the lyric diction in this article, which was updated during my Fulbright experience. I learned a lot by preparing for this recital and enjoyed having so many Fulbright grantees attend. And so thank you for supporting this project of mine. Having my husband there, he's in the middle photo, was also really special to me. He recorded it and it's available on YouTube if you'd like to check that out. I also had a couple of friends visiting from the States, and they also got to attend the recital, and they're featured in the bottom right. And then finally, the picture on the top right is me playing Jon Leif's piano. He's a composer in Iceland, and I was playing through one of the pieces that he composed, likely using that piano. So it's very special. This is an example of what's in my catalog of compositions. This is just the first 5 songs that I've cataloged, but there's about 25 others in this chart. And as you can see, the name of the song is on the left, and then where the text was published is in the center. And then also the composers that who have set these this poetry is on the right. I only included songs that can be purchased easily via electronic download or by emailing the composer who is still living in this article. So there are more, but some of them haven't been set or can't be purchased easily. So I want to talk about a little bit about what my continued scholarship is going to look like after I leave Iceland. So my next project is to create an anthology of Icelandic songs. In fact, I've already contacted some of the poets and some of the composers asking for permission, and I've gained permission to start working on an anthology. This anthology will feature several songs, up to 30 to 35 is my goal. Songs of varying levels of difficulty and spanning the entire 100-year range of Icelandic song scholarship. And I also plan to present at the Society for the Advancement of Scandinavian Studies conference in 2023 in Austin, Texas. I will be presenting a lecture recital of 3 to 5 Halldór Laxness songs by various living composers, and talking about how his texts are still relevant to Icelandic culture today. I'm working on publishing my handbook that I've mentioned that I updated during my Fulbright experience. and plan to get that published within the next year. I'm hoping that I return to Reykjavík, Listaháskóli, each semester. We'll see how that turns out, if not just for a visit, but to coach singers and teach voice lessons and continue to work on phonetics with the singers. Right now, I've only cataloged the songs by Halldór Laxness for voice and piano, but I hope to future catalog songs for choir, chamber groups, and opera, featuring text by Halldór Laxness as well. I didn't know coming into my Fulbright that this was going to be a project that I was invested in, but it seems that this is a need in the community. Until I find other new rabbit holes to go down, this will be my next project. So finally, I want to thank Fulbright Iceland for this wonderful experience. I had so many new adventures while I was here, and I am really grateful for this experience. I met many new friends and who I now consider colleagues, or sorry, many new colleagues who I now consider friends, and also many new friends here in Iceland. Sorry, with COVID, my brain's a little bit on the foggy side. From coffee dates to Fulbright events and Icelandic Thanksgiving with colleagues at our Airbnb, we had a really great time while I was here. These are memories that I will not forget, and I look forward to building more memories with these new friends. I also really enjoyed exploring Iceland and creating new memories with my husband. That was an incredibly impactful time in our lives. This time together is irreplaceable, and if it wasn't for the Fulbright, I wouldn't have had these experiences. One of our favorite parts of our time here was exploring Landmannalaugar together, which you can see in the bottom two photos. We thought we had totally missed the sheep herding event here in Iceland, but we just happened upon it in Landmannalaugar, and that's what the bottom left picture is representing. We also got to see the Northern Lights for the first time, several times, and that was a really special time for us. So thank you, Fulbright Iceland, for this experience and for believing in this project, and I hope that there will be more collaboration in the future.
Thank you so much, Kayla. And I have to say, I mean, I think it's just an outstanding project of, and I mean, I can imagine the work in putting together this phonetic guide. It must be an enormous amount of work and just so absolutely amazing that now singers all, not only in the US or in Iceland, but all over the world will have access to this, hopefully, and it will make Icelandic music so much more accessible than it has been. So I just want to say thank you so much, but I want to just see if we have any questions from the audience or anything on Zoom. Nothing on Zoom. I just might ask, you said that you plan to publish the handbook hopefully in the next year, and will that then be, available? How will singers be able to access that? Will it just be available online, or like people with Amazon, or how will it be?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the publishers that I was looking at publishing with was only willing to publish it as a hard copy book. And I don't think that that's where our industry needs to be moving. And so my next goal is to actually self-publish it and make it available almost exclusively as a PDF, because I think that that's going to be much more accessible. And then we'll have hyperlinks to things like examples of singers in Iceland performing this repertoire that is much easier to engage with. And so I'm not sure exactly where it'll be published yet, because this is only a new development that I was told it could only be published as a hard copy with this publisher. And so I'm looking into alternative plans for that, even if that means self-publishing.
Yeah. Well, once you've got it figured out, you have to let us all know so that we can make sure to let people know where they can find this. I know one of our former grantees, her daughter taught, who showed that such a family experience here. Her daughter became very interested in Icelandic. She's gone, back to the States a few years ago, but they sent me a video of her daughter's choir singing a song in Icelandic. And I just thought, how much easier that would have been for them had they had that kind of phonetic guide. So, yeah.
That's another big project because the Icelandic choral world is very big. And so part of what I'm working on now is writing phonetics for choirs because it is slightly different. And I know choir directors don't have as much time perhaps to sit down and go through my entire handbook. And so I've been transcribing some of these songs into phonetics for them. In fact, a friend of mine on Friday, her choirs just performed and premiered some works by Hildugunnar Runnarsdóttir, who's on faculty at Listaháskóli. And I transcribed these songs and spoke through the Icelandic phonetics for their choir. So I think that that's kind of the next goal, is working on the choral repertoire and writing out the phonetics for some of the most popular songs that choirs are wanting to perform, most notably the Requiem by Jón Leifs. That's one that I've been requested to transcribe lots of times. And so I finished that transcription, and I'm hoping that when it's sold to choirs, they're also given the link to purchase the phonetics because it would make it a lot easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and yes, just absolutely wonderful. I think this is such an impactful project, and we're just so happy to have had you here and to get to be a part of this with you. And I know that this is going to be of great interest. I mean, embassies, Icelandic embassies can even, would be interested in knowing about this, because I'm sure that they get inquiries sometimes. And so we're definitely going to be watching with great interest as we move forward with this. And however it turns out, and any assistance that we can give, please let us know. Just absolutely thrilled. So thank you again.
I don't have a question, but because also I want to let you rest your voice, and I know that this cannot have been easy to do this while I was sick.
Yeah.
But I'm so proud of you. This has been amazing, and I've learned a ton from you, and like developed this whole new respect for Icelandic diction and repertoire that I didn't even know existed. Like, it really helps me to see behind the scenes of what's happening when people are singing and how they learn and how they get to where they are. So thank you.
Yes. And just to say also, I was blown away at your concert.
Yeah.
You could never have known that this person wasn't a native Icelandic speaker, unless you knew that ahead of time. So it absolutely, I mean, I was blown away. Yes.
Yeah, hi. Oh, I see Hannah Torres there also. So hi, Hannah. This is
Hi.
Kayla from the Iceland University. I just wanted to say, because I've heard from the students how inspiring Kayla's visit has been, and that it is really amazing they were amazed that somebody would be interested in our repertoire and our language. So I have a question, can you talk a little bit about the interest or the need for Icelandic repertoire and for this phonetic guide in the States? Are your students interested? Do they want to sing Icelandic music?
Yeah, that's a great question, and is one that the singers ask me a lot. And I think that it's a hard question to answer, because of course my students are interested in singing in Icelandic because I care so very much about it. And I think if you show up as a teacher so engrossed in the thing that you're wanting to teach, your students, I think, feed off of that energy a little bit. But before me, I mean, Iceland has been a place of interest for Americans for quite a while, and mostly as a place for tourism. As you're aware, that's your biggest import is tourism. And so what's interesting to me is trying to place the repertoire in like the Icelandic environment. So making people aware that the Icelandic repertoire is so much a part of the culture and the things that they're interested in, the folklore and the environment and the politics, right? All of that you can see in the repertoire. So my students are interested in the repertoire. And in fact, this a class has been established at many universities that for advanced singers, mostly for graduate level singers, to learn more about the Nordic repertoire as a whole. And so now Icelandic music can fit in that curriculum because before it wasn't able to be. So my hope is that with this research and with this growing interest from my colleagues, that Icelandic music will be performed more and more now that the resources are more available.
Can I say a little bit? I'm Hanna. I'm from the Listaháskóli also, and I've been working. I've had the pleasure to work with Cayla, or have her within the faculty here, and it's just been so amazing to have her. And I just wanted to thank you, Cayla, because you've been so inspiring for all of us. And we're here to see you leave, but it's so great to see the work that you've been doing, and we're so proud of you, everything that you've been doing. So. I just hope that you get the opportunity to come and work with us as soon as possible and as often as possible. So I just want to say, great work.
Thank you, Hanna.
All right, thank you then. Thank you so much. Okay, so now we have another treat in store. Our second speaker has been affiliated with Reykjavík University. Wanda is a Fulbright-NSF Arctic Research Scholar visiting from the University of Washington. With her PhD in human sciences, her expertise lies in the gaming industry, or I should say one of her areas of expertise. She has many. But again, you might ask, what in the world has this to do with the Arctic? And once again, you're going to find out all about it. So Wanda, floor is yours.
So I too want to thank Fulbright. Thank you so much for letting me come over here. As someone that spends most of her time in the virtual space, the idea of actually being in a physical realm is pretty interesting. And I've actually learned a lot from this experience. So I've looked at a number of different areas in my work here. Over the sort of the overarching is this idea of empathetic computing, which is really using computing to help really connect people and bring about social change. And since I do come from the game industry, I look at this through the lens of games and game technologies such as virtual reality, augmented reality, and such. So I'm going to talk here about the different areas. I'm happy to say that I think all my projects will continue to move forward into next year. So I'm pretty excited about that. And that means I get to come back. Let's see here. Okay. So the first area that I want to talk to, which was my original thought when I came over, was looking at the use of virtual reality in particular for mental health and wellness. I've worked in the space looking at the use of virtual reality for anxiety and for managing, for pain management. And so when I came over here, because Reykjavík has an amazing virtual reality lab, which is part of the reason that I came over here. And I wanted to look at how you could use games in this way to bring about social change. What I discovered, though, is that when I landed here, I was introduced to an organization. They're the Icelandic organization of MND and ALS. And I started to think about it and how could you use virtual reality in particular to bring about quality of life. There is a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of depression, there's a lot of things that go on with something like ALS. And so that's really where I've focused most of my time. I've spoken at a number of, I spoke at one of their conferences. I actually spoke over in Scotland as well as this. And I proposed the idea of continuing to build a virtual environment to test with patients and such, and using with students, creating it. And so we have several students, and I'm going to continue working with them on this because we want to see how that might impact and really help people. really help their quality of life. So, so that was my first area to look at. But I expanded, and after the Arctic Circle conference, I started going back to one of my other passions, which has always been to look at the use of games and these technologies in terms of climate. I think anything in one's arsenal to bring about an awareness is important. And before I had come over here, I was working with a couple of colleagues on and an artist on an art exhibit around Northern Lights. And it actually launched in October in one of the museums in Seattle. And so I've always been interested in the Northern Lights, and I've always wanted to create a game around the Northern Lights as a part of a series of games, looking at the use of games. In this case, I would probably look at it in form of STEM to help people understand how they're created. People have this magical connection with them, and using LED and augmented reality, I think that's possible. So I'm already starting to write up a concept doc on this, and I'm hoping to start looking at building it out next year. So that's another area, and that would actually be one in a series of games. But I wanted to make one that was very focused here. Other things, exploration and understanding of the Icelandic game industry. I am a gamer. I've worked, as I said, I've worked in the game industry, and I teach game design. And I really wanted to understand the connection between the universities and the school system here and the game industry, which is a very growing, very vibrant community here. And I've been fortunate enough to meet with a number of the game representatives of the game industries, and worked with students to help mentor them and really collaborate with them to see where this could go in the future. Again, I know tourism and fishing and such are really key industries, but the game industry is pretty big here, and I think it's only going to continue to grow. So so I was excited to look at this and explore this area, and I'm in the process of writing a white paper on this to help people better understand what's going on in this industry, and continuing to connect with them. The other area, and people might say ethical issues, but it's I taught a class looking at ethical issues around emerging technologies. I think if you're going to use games and virtual reality or artificial intelligence or machine learning or any of these in such a way, I think you need to understand the ethical issues and the societal issues about it. And so I taught a 3-week intensive class that just finished up here, looking exactly at this, so that so the next generation of designers, the next generation of programmers and technologists and such can really understand this, because it wraps all the way back to looking at being mindful when you're creating a game experience, again, to help people with becoming mindful or becoming to deal with depression or any of these. If you don't understand the ethical issues, I think that can be a problem. So I have been asked to come back and teach this again next year. So I'm looking forward to that. And this too has really allowed me to think about that maybe there is more need for people to really understand this, and more classes in this. It doesn't seem like there's, it seems like a good area to expand and look at to do teaching in and such. So so that was the other area that I've really focused on, and I'm glad that this is moving forward. I'm glad that all these projects are moving forward. I'm actually pretty giddy about this. And that's what I have. Other things, if you go back to, if I go back here, so go back. I should know this since I'm kind of a technologist, not so good on Zoom. you'll see the picture up in the, that's Baktos. He's sort of been my therapy cat. And people that follow me on Facebook are probably like up to here, and pictures of Baktos. And I just have 3 more I took today. But it's been a really amazing experience. And I have to say, again, on a personal note, traveling, and I've been traveling solo. So, well, with elves, but other than the elves, I'm pretty good. But it's been a really eye-opening. And again, I look at this through the lens of the virtual, and to be in the real is really, and to see if there's a way to interpret or how that you can blend those realities is something that I'm really excited about doing, so that other people can experience what's here, because it's such it's far better than any of the virtual worlds I've hung out in, and it's real. So I've been really excited about that. I would be sad to, in saying that I'm leaving, but I know I'm coming back next year, and so I'm happy about that. I also took the opportunity to I spent a lot of time meeting people that live here and just talking to people, which has been a really good experience for me to really understand different perspectives and such. And so I've really appreciated that opportunity. So yeah, so thank you. How I got a photo with the president.
Yeah.
So so I spoke at I guess I could have gone around the top one, cut my legs up. That's my epic shot down at the lagoon. Yeah, I got really good at taking selfies, timed selfies. So that's a timed selfie. Yeah, but it was actually more than my legs. No, this was an honor. This was huge for me. I had literally just landed here, and 2 weeks later, I was speaking at an international conference of ALS. And a lot of these individuals are there's the head of the American ALS, Canadian ALS, and the international ALS. And so they were all here, and then they had a event afterwards at the president's house. So I got to go, and the focus of my talk there was looking at virtual worlds, VR for disabilities, and the response was pretty good, I would say. It's very good. So that's how I wound up in that photo. But it was a great. It's really actually taken my research in a whole new direction. Which I think is part of what Fulbright's like to do, and so it's really I'm very committed to looking at ways that if you think that 15% of the world population has a disability of a variety of types, and then you look at something like the project that my students will be working on next quarter that I'm continuing, not only will it hopefully help people with ALS, but I could see it working with helping people with strokes and MS in a lot of different ways, and allow people to communicate with each other and such. So that's that. The Northern Lights, because I've always been fascinated by them, and that's why this has really empowered me to do the game that I've been ruminating about for probably the last year. But actually seeing them in person allows me an idea of what I want it to look like. And standing down in the harbor and watching all the tourists come and wait for hours to see the Northern Lights, I just realized there's such a power. And of course, looking at light pollution and such. I mean, I think there's a lot of things. And as I said, the other one's my buddy. Yeah, so he's my pal. He's not going with me. I'm not taking him. So
You'll carry a piece of him forever with you. Maybe you can build him into your game.
I could.
You could like pop up.
I could. I've seen him pop up elsewhere around in different items. So yeah. So he is. He's up to 13,000. He hit that. Yeah, on Instagram.
And I just said, Mia is the only dog that practices.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So are there any questions? Yeah, sure. Well, right now, funny you should say that. I pivot well in when I teach that class. Actually, what I'm looking at right now, and I had my class look at, was the idea of the use of AI art. I don't know if you've seen all of the and everyone. I mean, I have done that too. I saved them from it because I did it and uploaded all my images, which I have concerns from a privacy and surveillance point of view, that I've just given them images for facial recognition. Because even though they say, and we all know which engine I'm talking about, they say that they get rid of them after 24 hours, but then in even smaller print, they say, but they do keep the right to use them for other things. So the other one that just came up, which I think is fascinating, is the Open Chat, the AI, which can write your papers for you. And what are the issues in terms of education? We also talked about robotics. We talked a lot about games and the different area, the good and the bad of games, I guess, is to think of it that way. We also looked at, we looked at a lot on social media, because a lot of that is gamified. And so I wanted them to be aware of the gamification elements in it. So we looked at a lot of those things, a lot of those areas. And I think it's just good to understand them. Yeah, I think so. Despite the fact I look really good as a fantasy warrior, I must say. I am attached to that. I am attached to that photo. But yeah. So any other?
So I thought it was really interesting also the way sort of we're thinking about using games to increase awareness of things like climate change and all of, how do you do that in a way that doesn't become preachy? And how do you sort of, what are some of the sort of, the ways that you try to incorporate that into a game while still sort of,
while making it fun?
Yeah.
Because a lot of these kind of games, they fall under the category of serious games, and they tend not to be fun. But because, in part because I've worked in the, as a designer and such, I have a pretty good understanding. But I think I look at it as stealth learning. So I look at how you can put components into the game without having trivia games or Q&A games or something. So giving them an awareness, it could be through quests that they have to. I'm actually thinking for the using the Northern Lights game as an example. I'm thinking about having them understand the periodic table and having them pull the periodic table, the different, and as they appear, you would have an animation behind it that would explain that, and then almost like a recipe. Put those recipes together to then have the green or something. The other game, which actually goes back to the health that I'm thinking about as well, is an idea of sort of a game of looking at facing your fears and looking at the different anxieties, the different mental issues, and having a representation of it and letting people fight their monsters, kind of thing. That's something else that I've been playing with. So I have a couple ideas, but they've really been inspired from here. But yeah, I think those kind of games, because they do get really preachy and nobody wants to read either. So I'm thinking of it, is it more experiential? So theater actually plays into a lot of these too, theater and film and such. So that kind of subtliness. So I'm excited to do this.
We should collaborate on
Oh, we should.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we could. I have students work on climate change games. I've actually seen some pretty incredible ones, card games, trading card games and board games. Yeah, not so much. I mean, video games are nice. Don't get me wrong, but there's a lot that you can do just, you know, collecting. That's why I use the recipe idea. You collect this. I've done games. I did more my students did a number of years ago, a Facebook game on the, we have a wetlands near my campus. And so we had them create the biodiversity by collecting animals and plants. And if they collected so many of these, this would happen. And then we, so it's a good way to do it and it's fun. And then it allows collaboration too, because I think that's important. So it's not a solo, none of these are solo experiences.
Just like really smart.
Oh, well, it's done now. Yeah, I mean, that's just what they do. Oh, so what do they, so it's kind of like, sort of like a dopamine hit,
Yeah.
you know? And so if you deconstruct a game and you deconstruct it to look at gamification, then what is gamification? Gamification, you have a rule. You have, you know, you get feedback, and the feedback you get from social media are likes. Because if they understand their audience correctly, then getting likes will make you feel good. And then you want it again. It's like gambling, right? You pull slots and you feel good. And then if you don't get it, then are you feeling lucky? Kind of thing. So, but yeah, it's always been that way. I mean, they used to have games, literally games like Farmville, but now everything sort of integrates into that. And I think that's, I mean, even social media, looking at like TikTok, you know, that idea of an amazing AI engine that can really start to watch the algorithm and move you through that experience and personalize that. And the more personalized you get, the more you can get with the gamification. Yeah, it's definitely, I could go on for hours on that, so I'll stop. I'll stop. Sure.
Yeah, any more questions or comments? And I just want to say thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Go back.
Yes, and again, yes, we certainly do hope that you will be back soon. And again, just an outstanding example of what Fulbright is all about, right? So interesting that you've also, you know, and it's not, Iceland gains a lot by bringing these scholars here, but the scholars also gain a lot, like just what you were talking about, all of the ideas that it is generating for you, and the collaborations that are coming out of it that are so great. And that's of course what we want. We want this not to just be a one-off, but for future collaborations to spark from that as well. And I think even a lot of what you were talking about, because we have people here from the University of the Arts, that a lot of it is very relevant to your work as well, even though she was working with Reykjavík University this time. So yeah, so I just want to thank everybody who tuned in or came in person. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. I am thankful for the Fulbright program and what it gives us here in Iceland. It just brings about, and I think both of these presentations that we've heard today show us how Fulbright continues to foster collaboration long after the grant period. We hope to see both of you here often. And of course, when you come, you must be in contact with us here. It's a requirement. And we really look forward to seeing how these relationships that you're building move forward in the future. And we hope that you'll keep us updated, even when you're not coming, just when something exciting is happening, to please let us know. It's maybe something we could put on our social media or in our newsletter, who knows, but yes, so please do keep us in the loop. we're so proud of both of you, and we're so glad. Just let me say that one more time. We're so glad to have had you here for this semester. If any of our audience are thinking themselves, hey, I'd like to get a Fulbright scholar, our next application cycle for the request for scholar grants will be opening up in the spring. But also, if you know of scholars in the United States that might be a good fit for one of our Arctic programs, and we talk about Arctic widely, as you see with these two grantees, they're not glaciologists or geologists necessarily. We look at the Arctic broadly. So if you see any opportunities to bring a US scholar over, ask them to apply to one of those grants. Once again, thanks to everybody, to our two scholars for presenting today, to everybody who came and tuned in. We hope to see you all again for our next presentation, which will be sometime in the spring probably, but we hope that all of you will tune in again for that. Thanks everybody, thanks for coming.